Hi guys, welcome to Rehab United here in San Diego. My name is Bryan Hill. I'm a physical therapist and owner of Rehab United.
My name is Scott Ryan. I'm the director of the sports performance for Rehab United. I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist.
So one of the things that's happened is your director of your club has come to us and said, hey, Scott, Bryan, we want to keep our kids injury free. And right now we're seeing kind of random injuries that we don't understand why they're happening, what's happening. It's hard for us as coaches to figure out what to do with these injuries. So today we're going to spend some time doing that. We're going to focus on two main groups, and those groups are the athletes going into high school, and then the second group would be the athletes that are staying with the club and they're going to be continuing to play. And within those two groups are two categories. One, your child, you watching this video tend to be tight, hypomobile, very tight, never great at stretching. And then you have a second group, which is the hypermobile, the floppy knees, the constant laxity. So we have those two groups, and we're going to address each of those categories and give you some strategies on how to deal with that.
So the first group we're going to start with today is our tighter group, our hypomobility group. So we want to tend to look at these guys as the ones that are trying to run really fast, or the bigger, broader guys and girls that don't tend to have the mobility when they're in a full sprint. We tend to see a lot of weird tight motions instead of true mobility that we want to find. So we're going to start with just some general field stretches to kind of go after that group. The first one we're going to start with is a kneeling stretch. We're going to focus a lot on the hip flexors, making sure that we're getting good extension of that back leg. We're not arching through our back, we're keeping our core engaged and allowing ourselves to move in more of a dynamic motion. So we always want to be moving. We never want to be held in a static position because we never move that way on the soccer field. So you can see Bryan's adding in a three-dimensional component to this with his rotation side to side, but he's always geared towards flexing at that hip. So now he can switch legs, do both sides, and we're going to focus on the hamstring next. So that's the muscle behind the leg. We tend to see a lot of these with sprinting athletes that we see injuries on that posterior side of the hamstring. Bryan's going to go forward, side, and across to really focus on the three dimensions of mobility of the hamstring. Next, Bryan's going to switch to 3D calf mobility. So we've seen our typical stretches out on the fields where kids hold these, but we want these to be dynamic. So he's going to begin with a nice sagittal motion forward, a transverse motion across, and then he's going to be able to move in that frontal plane side to side. So all the motion's geared towards that calf, but we're finding it in the three dimensions of mobility that we want to find.
The key when we're going through this is, as an athlete, as a coach, you want to implement some of this into your training. Good warm-up, jogs, high knees, heels up, that to get the muscles warm, and then go into these stretches. Each of these should take less than 2 minutes, but you're spending enough time. And if a particular kid is tighter in one area than another, I would spend a little more time doing so. Holds typically 20 to 30 seconds. Oscillations or bouncing, 10 to 15 reps would be great. And then consistency. What happens is our kids go to practice, they only stretch at practice, never at home. So that should be a routine that you're doing with your child. If you're an athlete watching this, this should be on the regular until your mobility is within normal range, comparable to other peers of your own. All right, so great job from Scott, kind of covering that mobility is not just stretching. We have mobility and flexibility, two different components that we like to put together. A mobile joint is only as powerful as it can be when it's on a load, and then tissue itself needs to be lengthened into a fashion that can be used in that. And when we look at it, we want to make it sport specific. It needs to look like soccer. So when you're doing these motions, rather than just holding one position, you notice we're using three dimensions. So that's group one. Our second group comes to very common in young females. Certainly some males have the mobility, but why the ACL tears are much greater than females is a laxity component, or a flexibility or lack of control of the joint. So we primarily see these injuries in the knees, but we can see them, patella dislocations, shin splints, as well as hip flexor pulls and muscle pulls. So this particular group, we need to gain stability. Flexibility is still important. We still want to maintain that mobility. So all the same exercises, but now we're going to move into a strength component. When we do this, we can add weight progressively, but to start with, if your child's new to this, body weight is perfect. So do it on non-practice days. That way you're not sore going into it. We're going to take you through a squat, a simple squat, but the problem is a lot of times we don't squat very effectively. So we're going to go through first squat mechanics. You'll notice the knees do go forward over the toes. That's a myth that they cannot. but we notice we're engaging the hips. So Scott here is bringing his chest forward, butt back. Another easy way to say it is just sit in a chair. The second thing is we want depth of the load. So when the squat is in effect, we want the hips below the knees. That we want to break that parallel. If you notice as well, position or biomechanically, Scott's knee is right over the toe, hip is in line with the knee. You'll notice he's not knee in or knock knee or knee out. Show those two bad positions. So this is kind of a compensated position, and or what we really see is a lack of control. If you're seeing this in a squat either as a coach, a parent, or you're doing this as yourself, that's something that needs to be addressed. So start until you can get this position perfect in the mirror, seeing the mechanics. Don't try the next things we're gonna go over, but that's a good starting position. Weights even through the toes, through the heels, good chest position, chest is up, hips drop below the knees. So that's part one. Good.
So one of the most important aspects of finding mobility is also using weighted mobility. Sometimes your joints need a load or need a variable in there to help gain a range of motion. We don't just want to find it with body weight all the time. We want to introduce things like medicine balls. So anything with width is going to allow us better mobility at our hips, so really focusing weight back, locking those knees out, and working on good controlled depth. If we want to focus a little bit more on our upper back, getting our chest flat, we can go to a bar. So we can use anything from a light PVC pipe just to create mobility and get used to motion, to a 35, 45 pound bar, or a training bar, which is just increasing 15 pounds. So by going overhead, locking our arms out, we're going to focus a lot on our thoracic mobility, keeping our chest nice and flat, dropping into that motion, and coming straight up and down. Notice the bar isn't moving too much forward and back. It's coming in a straight plane up and down. This is really allowing me to gain the motion at my hips because I'm not allowing my shoulders or my back to round out to gain that flexion of my hips. This keeps me nice and flat and a really good mobility exercise.
Okay, great. Assuming we've now got the squat down, mechanically sound, we're going to go through what we would give you as a base matrix workout for your athlete that either needs strength, stability, and this will translate into power on the field. So we're going to take that squat, we're going to split it into 9 different positions. So you'll watch Scott, he's going to show you those 9 positions, changing the toe mechanics, but at the same time always maintaining the same form. So we'll call this an SFT squat. We're not going to do 3 to 4 reps right now, but that's what we would do when we do this workout. So go ahead, Scott's showing you the SFT squats. Toes are straight. This one we already know. Notice he's bringing in some speed and some power, still keeping the same depth. We have toed out. That's our second position. Then we go toed in. This is probably the hardest position for our athletes. Then we're going to move to a stride stance. So right foot in front, same squat. Good. He's doing a couple each position. Then we go toed out and toed in. Why are we doing this? As he takes you through the remaining positions, we're challenging the hips in a different biomechanical position. So we're taking the joint itself, taking the muscle itself through a lengthening and shortening position while engaging the muscle. So we're building strength and coordination at the same time. Very valuable. Both feet are on the ground, so it's a little bit safer to do. Now we're going to move into a lunge position. So it's the progression, and we're going to also lunge in 3 planes of motion. Scott's going in anterior lunge, again comes back, he's going through a lateral lunge, and then he's going to do a back diagonal lunge. This is our common matrix. We have some other variations, but let's just keep it simple. All we can do is expect the athlete to go through their normal range and then give facilitation or correction accordingly. If we see something that looks abnormal or not the same as what Scott's taking us through, we want to make some adjustments. Now he's going to show you real quick some variations, rotations. So he's got an opposite side reach. He can do an inside or same side reach. He can do an overhead reach on some of these. So all these are variations. And then if we want to make it more of a strength dominant exercise, we're going to add dumbbells. 5 pounds, 8 pounds, 10 pounds progress. Make sure it's good quality while we're progressing that. Now, soccer, running is a single leg sport. We go up for a header, land on one leg. We plant, cut, dominant positions on that leg, and there is our wrist. So it's important that we build single leg strength. So we're going to first show you just a single leg squat. What I want is Scott to reach his right foot out in front, and he's going to go as low as he can. And you notice it's not an easy task to do, but if I can get this low, that's success. My guess is 90% of these athletes watching this video cannot get to this depth. You'll see some variations. Very commonly is a valgus knee drive, which Scott showed. A lot of wobbliness. this should become one of your primary exercises that you want to look proficient, pain-free. If you're not, you should be picking up the phone, calling our clinic saying, hey, I want to get my kid in for an assessment. From there, we're going to transverse into the 3 planes and do a reach with the foot, and we're going to do a sagittal plane, frontal plane, and transverse plane reach. All that means is we're changing the direction of the drive, we're challenging the knee, the hip, the foot in a different way, and then Scott's tweaks can be A, hold weight, or B, speed. I like speed here because it starts to look more and more like the sport. We can then challenge ourselves into plyometrics, change of direction, cutting, and all those different things, but ultimately we're building a foundation which many of our athletes don't ever get because we're not thinking it's safe to strength and condition our young athletes when reality is body weight, normal biomechanics is super important. What is your take on kind of the importance of that strength, Scott?
This is going to help us a lot with change of direction. A lot of the kids you'll see will do lateral, they'll do forward anterior motions or posterior lateral to cut, go after a ball or another athlete. So by practicing these different planes of motion, we're doing a lot of the joint, not just with the tissue and the strength, but we're allowing that rotational component to happen. What's very important is adding things like unstable surfaces so we can grab different heights, elevate them to go for different depths so they have more room to reach if they're not having success just on the ground. We want to see that the foot is stable as well as the knee and the hip, but also if they know what to do with their upper body, that it's not just arms flailing everywhere. We want to see control through all of these exercises, no matter the variations that we give them.
So knowing that your clubs, your athletes are probably dealing with some of these issues, we hope this video was beneficial to you. We're available at any time. You go to rehabunited.com. You can reach out to Fit Society. We do personal training, strength and conditioning, speed and agility, soccer specific. That's our specialty. We want to be here to help your kids be successful. One of the biggest things we see is kids wait too long, parents wait too long thinking this will just go away. We want to see your kid right away when there's an injury so that we can address it. All the research shows the sooner you address an injury, the better. We hope that you take this information and utilize it. This should be a 3 to 4 days a week program until you become proficient at it. And then you're going to see part 2. We'll do the exact same thing, Scott and I, and we'll give you the next level of this.
What we don't want to see is compensations, things that your kids are doing repetitively that are going to lead long-term to bad injuries. So as we start looking at your clubs and start looking at your athletes, coaches, anybody can start seeing the different motions of the knee so we can start correcting those here. Okay, those are motions that down the road, if we do them over and over, we're going to do it, but when we add force or we add contact, that's what's going to put us in a dangerous position. But if we can teach you with weights, with quality and form, we'll be able to prevent some of those because we've been at those ranges before.
Perfect. It's an honor working with your club, working with your kids. We really appreciate it. We hope you use this as a resource. Again, check us out online, follow us, Facebook, Twitter, social media, obviously, is kind of the world your kids are living in. We aren't Snapchatting you, we promise. And then definitely reach out to us. Come on in, Rehab United, we do free injury screens for your kids, so if there is a problem, go ahead, come on in, we'll take good care of you.